I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Ms. Joany, started her career as project engineer at Wipro Technologies, Chennai from 2005 to 2009. At present, she is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Sathyabama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai, since 2009. She has 12 years of experience in teaching and research in the field of signal, image processing, and VLSI. She has completed a sponsor project from PRFST, Gujarat as Co-5, along with her research supervisor and Co-Vice Chancellor of Sathyabama, Dr. E. Logashanmugam as PI, which has received a accolade with A+ grade. She is also an active MIE in the Institution of Engineers. She has published more than 40 plus papers in international and national peer-reviewed journals and several conferences at national and international level to her credit. She has written a book chapter in the book titled Nanotechnology in the Beverage Industry Fundamentals and Applications, first edition Elsevier. She has been the co-author of monograph on substructural rudiment of telecommunication systems, which is published by Lampard Academic Publishing, Germany. She has guided many academic projects, conducted many number of guest lectures and webinars. Now, without any further ado, I request Ms. Joany to take the platform.
Very good morning to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Nisha ma'am. It was a very warm introduction. Thank you, ma'am. At this juncture, I would like to thank VS Lakshmi Engineering College for Women and the organizers, Dr. P. Amaravati, Professor and Principal, and the conveners, Mr. C.H. Rajshekhar, Head of the Department, and Ms. J. Ganga Ramesh, the PG Coordinator, for organizing this 6 days faculty development program. And on today's, the day 4 of the 6 days faculty development program, we are going to discuss about the Python programming for network connectivity. So let me start sharing the screen. Are you able to see my screen, ma'am? Okay. So in today's session, we are going to discuss about the Python programming for network connectivity. So we all know what a network is and how the networks are created for interconnecting the devices. Let's have a quick outline of what we are going to discuss today. The first one is socket module. So what is the socket and how it is created? Then we will learn about the socket programming in Python. Then that is followed by the client server module and the program for server in Python, as well as the programming for client in Python. So this is what we are going to learn today. So let's have a picture of the socket module. So what a socket is. So this client, the nodes and the devices that are connected to the network with the help of these sockets. So they get communicator, they get connected to the network, the server or whatever devices through the sockets. So we need to establish and create a programming and write programming for initiating the data transfer process and for the identification of the nodes and the clients that are connected to a network. So this is how a socket model will be looking at. So physically, this is the pictorial representation of how a socket module will be. Okay. Now let us get into the topic. So let's have some refresh of the basics of network. So we know all this about the basics we have already known. What is a network? A network is a collection of computers, the servers, mainframes, and network devices, peripherals, or other devices connected to one another to allow the sharing of data. And we all know that the best example of a network is the internet, which connects the millions of people all over the world. In practice, a network is comprised of a number of different computer systems connected by physically or by means of wireless connections. So that is why we create a network. So for some of the examples of networks, we all know, we are all familiarized with the terminologies, LAN network, WAN network, and so many means. Okay. Now let us see what is the socket. The term socket is analogous to the physical female connectors, that is the connection between the two nodes through a channel being visualized as a cable with two male connectors plugging into the sockets at each node. So that is the physical appearance of a socket. Similarly, the term port also we should know. So what does the port mean? The port means, or it is also otherwise called as another female connector that is used for external endpoints at a node, and the term socket is also used for an internal endpoint of local interprocess communication, either not over a network. That is, even within the devices, we want to connect any other peripherals, we need to make use of these ports. So whenever a device is connected to a network, we need to enable these ports and establish the connections. And whenever we wanted to connect the devices to the network, we need to initiate the connections by programming the sockets. However, the analogy is limited as network communication need not be one-to-one or have a dedicated or communication channel, because network communication is open to all. It need not be always fixed from one device to another device. It can be a broadcast from one to many or many to one. Okay, so this is this is the explanation for a simple socket. Now let us see in detail. Sockets and the socket API are used to send messages across the network. So it provides a form of inter-process communication. So network can be logically a local network to the computer, or the one that physically connected to an external network, or within its own connections to the other networks. So they are assumed to be associated with the specific socket address, and namely the IP address. So normally this specify it as technically socket address, which means that it represents the IP address. IP address means we all know that it is the Internet Protocol address at which the particular device is connected. And the port number for a local node is that corresponds to, there is a corresponding socket address at the foreign node and the other node, which itself is an associated socket used by the foreign process. So this is about furthermore about these socket modules. Now let us see how this terminology socket has arrived. The socket was originated with ARPANET in 1971, and later it became an application program interface in the Berkeley Software Distribution Operating System Company, which has released in 1983, and that is termed as Berkeley sockets. When the internet took off in the late 1990s with the evolution of World Wide Web, it is WWW, so did the network programming. So we need to connect so many systems in the network in order to establish the World Wide Web connections. So that comes the evolution of web servers and the browsers and nothing but the application program interfaces, wherein the only application taking advantage of newly connected networks and using the sockets. The client server applications of all types and sizes came into widespread use. Today, although the underlying protocols are used by the socket API, we have evolved over years. We have been seeing the new ones, which are at the low-level application program interface, that remains the same. So they have started developing to write program in different platforms, that is either Java or any other Unix operating systems or operating system oriented. So in today's session, we will learn about how to write the Python programming for initialization of the socket to establish connection of a node or device into a network. So the most common type of socket applications are the client-server applications, where one side acts as the server and waits for the connections from the clients. So the sockets are the endpoints of a bidirectional communications channel. Sockets may communicate within a process or between the process on the same machine or between processes on the different machines or the different continents, the different locations. So these sockets may be implemented over a number of different channel types. That is, either it may be Unix domain sockets and the TCP. TCP we know, the transmission content protocol, which helps or which means tells what type of format and the protocols that we need to follow while the data is being transmitted over a network, as well as UDP and so many other protocols are there. Okay, and this socket library provides a specific class for handling the common transports as well as the generic interface and for handling the rest of the other protocols. So the associating to a socket and with a socket address is called binding. So the process here involved is first we have to create a socket, then bind it, then make it identified in the network, then establish connection to the node, then we start to transmit the data. So this is how the process goes. Okay. Now let us see how to write the program for socket in Python. So the socket programming is a way of connecting two nodes on a network to communicate with each other. So for example, if one socket or a node listens to a particular port at an IP address, while the other socket reaches out to the other to form a connection. So here comes the server forms the listener socket while the client reaches out to the server. So normal, simple, what is that server client combination? That is, the client always requests for services to the server, and the server listens to the client and it responds to the client with some answer or some solution. So this is how the client server communication is happening. So this Python provides two levels of access to the network services. That is, at low level, it can access the basic socket support in the underlying operating system or whatever operating system we have, which allows to implement the clients and servers for both connection oriented as well as connectionless protocols. We know we are all familiarized with these two terminologies, that is connection oriented and the connectionless protocols. That is, connection oriented means the source and the destination should first establish the connection, then they have to keep transmitting the data in the one way or the other, and till the end of the data transmission it has to be in physical connection. So the best example of connection oriented protocols are nothing but the circuit switching, and the analogous to that particular thing is that the connectionless protocols, wherein it will be sent in the burst of data packets in the network and it takes any path that is free. So connectionless protocols. So the best example is packet switching methodology. So that is in case of the data networking. So this Python also has some set of libraries that provides high level access to the specific application level network protocols such as FTP and HTTP, that is high file transfer protocol, as well as the for web browsers we make use of hypertext transfer protocols and so on. Okay, so let's I just wanted to show how we get connected to a server and how the client and the other programs are getting connected. Oh, its sharing is fast. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Yes. Okay. Okay, this is about a simple clip about how a client and server are getting communicated. It is all available in the YouTube, but I just wanted to make it in this presentation. So now let us start with the simple server programming. So first we have to import the socket, and then we have to create the socket. Once again. So now let us see how the socket programming is going on. So the socket programming is the real backbones behind the web browsing. So in simple terms, there is a server and the client concept. Okay. Now let us see another clipping of how a socket and what a socket is.
Connecting two computers over the internet is not so easy task because the internet traffic or simply packets of data is routed directly from transmitter to receiver, unlike the radio communication or television broadcasting. So how does these packets manage to reach the destination from one computer to another? This is where TCP/IP comes in. So in this video we are going to learn about networking and TCP/IP socket programming. It is a two-part series. By the end of these two videos you can learn how to connect to anyone's computer in the world using just your laptop sitting at your home. But before getting started to build this application, you want to have some basic knowledge about networking like IP address, port address and socket. Coming to IP address, you can think IP address as the address of your computer or a device. If you have a device and it has the ability to connect to the internet, then it definitely has an IP address. The word IP stands for Internet Protocol. Right now you are living in a house that has some address. Because your house has some address, people can send you mail or come to your house. Without the address, they can't able to reach you. Similarly, when the computer has to communicate or send a message to any other computer, it needs an address. And this address is known as IP address. So here is what Google says about IP address. According to Google, IP address is a unique string of numbers separated by full stops that identifies each computer using the Internet Protocol. Means a unique string of numbers. That means no two IP addresses are same. Separated by full stop means divided into two parts and the numbers between these full stops are ranged from 0 to 255. And we can identify each device using unique IP address. This IP address is divided into two types, public and private IP address. Public IP address is given by internet service provider like Jio, Airtel, Idea, Act and Excel Broadband, etc. Whereas the private IP address is given to you by routers or other network address translation devices or simply NAT devices. To find public IP address, go to Google and type what's my IP. It will show you your IP address. And to find private IP address, open command prompt and type ipconfig and press enter. You will be given at least a list of IP addresses and there you will find your IP address. And these public and private IP addresses are again divided into two types, static and dynamic IP address. Coming to static IP address, they are constant and never change, whereas the dynamic IP address will change. Static IP addresses are used for servers and websites. When you type google.com in any web browser, you are not typing a name. This name actually redirects you to an IP address and opens the website. To find any static IP address, again open command prompt and type whatever website you want to find. Like example ping google.com. Here you can find static IP address of Google. This will also sometimes changes based on your location. The IP address of nearest Google server is shown here. Coming to ports, you can think ports as an exact address or simply house numbers, while IP address represents the city or the street name and the port address defines the exact house number you are living in. So if a computer tries to connect with another computer or server, it not only needs the IP address but the port address as well. When you are using internet with multiple applications running at once like YouTube, Netflix or video calling, all the packets combinedly reach to your IP address. But how these packets manage to reach correct application? This is where port address comes in. Each application on your computer works on separate port address. Based on this port address, these packets manage to reach their correct destination. So how exactly you will find this port address on your computer? If you are using Windows, simply open command prompt and type netstate space -a space -b space -n. Then you will find some common port address used by different applications on your computer. So these are the collection of some common port numbers that some popular protocols uses. For example, HTTP uses port number 80, where FTP file transfer protocol uses port 20. HTTP protocol normally uses port 80. For example, open google.com with port number 80, we get Google website. But if you try to open google.com with port 20, which is a FTP port, we are not allowed to the website and says address is restricted by Google. So here port addresses are so useful to access or deny the users into their servers or websites. Coming to sockets, before we are getting into informal definition of what socket actually means, let's go to the official definition of socket according to Google. According to Google, a socket is a one endpoint of two-way communication link between two programs running on the network. A socket is bound to a port number so that the TCP layer can identify the application that data is destined to be sent to. An endpoint is a combination of IP address and port number. Terrible to understand, right? Let us see it in easy words. So what it actually trying to say is sockets are required for one computer to communicate with another computer. So basically sockets open up a layer of communication from one device to another by bounding the port address and IP address together. So you have one computer and your friend computer. To communicate between both of them, you have to create a socket, and that socket bound to an IP address and port number. And then the socket is able to communicate or send information to your friend's computer. Sockets are inbuilt in all programming languages. Like in Java, it is available in java.net package, and in Python, it is available in socket library. Here are some of the socket commands in Python. Socket.socket. It is used to create a socket, that's it. And after creating a socket, the next thing we are going to do is to bind the IP address and port number to the socket using s.bind, socket.bind. Host means nothing but IP address and port means port number. S.send is used to send the data from one computer to another computer. Coming to socket.listen, it is used to listen or data from the client side. Socket.receive, it is used to receive the data from the client. Socket.close, it is used to terminate the connection between client and server. So that's it. In the next video.
So that is about this socket programming. Now let us see all this in detail. I just wanted to share in a, what is that, animation kind of way. That is why I have shared that particular clipping so that it will be more informative. So now let us get into how to write the programming, Python programming for socket module. So this Python socket module provides an interface to the Berkeley's sockets, that's application program interface. So it provides a convenient and consistent application program interface that maps directly to these system calls and their C counterparts. So we need to know about certain this application program interface functions and methods before starting to write the Python programming for this socket module. So these are some of the application, that is socket API functions and methods using which we are going to write the programming. So first let us see, that is socket off, bind off, listen off, and accept off. So these are some of the functions. Now let us see each and everything in detail. So this is picture shows the sequence of this socket API calls and the data flow of how the data is being communicated and how a connection is established between the client and the server in case of a TCP socket flow. So this is the server side and this is the client side. So first step, we have to create the socket. Then after creating the socket with the help of that socket of function, then we have to bind it. Then after binding it, we have to make the server to listen with the help of that listen of function. Whether some servers or some clients or some other devices are requesting for any kind of applications or any kind of request. And after listening, once any device is identified, then it has to accept it. Then after accepting, what it has to do is it has to first establish the connection to the particular client. Then it has to send and receive the data within the server and the client. After that, once the data transmission or the transfer of data between the servant and the client is over, it has to close the connection. Then once getting an acknowledgement message of close message, it has to receive the data. Once it is received, it has to disconnect. It has to close the function, that is the connection, with the help of this close function. Okay, so this is the sequence of the socket API calls and the data flow for establishing connection between the server and the client. Okay, now let us see the socket programming by importing the socket library. So first one is we have to create a socket. So before creating the socket, we have to import some of the socket functions. So for that, the first command in this Python programming is import socket. Okay. So the first one is we have to import. Then after importing, we are creating the socket. So how it should be created? With the help of this socket.socketof function. And we have to pass the parameters. So how we are defining? S is equal to S dot socket of the two parameters we have to pass. That is socket dot AF underscore inet, comma, socket dot sock underscore string. So these two are the parameters that we are going to pass while creating a socket function. So once the socket instance is created and we are passing these two parameters, what does these two parameters define? So the first parameter AF underscore inet and the second one is the sock underscore string are nothing but this AF underscore inet refers to the address, the IP address of the particular host. Okay, the host address. And then the sock underscore string means it is for the connection oriented TCP protocol. It is for connection oriented TCP protocol. Okay, so it will be different for the connectionless protocol that we will see in detail. So these two are the parameters. So first one we are going to pass the first parameter as that is socket.af underscore inet, which is going to define the host IP address. And the next one is the socket string, which is going to define it is connection oriented TCP protocol. Okay, and for connectionless it is going to be sock underscore DGRAM. Okay, now let us see. So some of the standard vocabularies that we should know before starting to write the socket programming. So what is the domain? So the family of protocols that is used for the transport mechanisms and the parameters which we are passing. So these values are constants which are nothing but AF underscore inet, PF underscore inet, PF underscore Unix in terms of the Unix operating system, and it goes on like that. So that domain, which operating system we are going to work on, that also we should be familiarized with. Then what are the type of parameters we are going to pass when the communication between the two endpoints are established? For example, sock underscore string, as we have seen in the previous slide, it is for connection oriented protocol, and we'll be making use of sock underscore DGRAM for connectionless protocols. Okay, and the next one is what type of protocol that we have to define as a one more parameter, third parameter, while creating the socket. So typically, normally it will be 0. Okay, we have to pass that protocol as a 0. So this must be used to identify a variant of protocol within a particular domain and the type. Then the various host names, that is we have to address whether it is for sending broadcasting purposes or whether it is for receiving a particular binary address or binary address information, all those things we should know. Then comes their port. So each server listens for clients calling on one or more ports. The port may be a fixed port number or a string containing a port number or a name of a service. So these are the parameters we are going to pass. The first one is the host name and next one is the port address. Okay. Now let us see the socket module, how it is created. That is, so this is an example. To create a socket module, we have to make use of this function. That is, S is equal to socket of. First one is the host address and what type of, whether it is connection oriented or connectionless, and the protocol by default we are going to define it to be 0. Okay. So this is all about that socket family. So it defines the socket family. Normally it is going to take the parameter AF underscore Unix or AF underscore inet. And the socket type, it is going to be either sock underscore string or sock underscore DGRAM. Okay. Now let us see some other sequence of functions that we need to go through after creating the socket. Okay. So after creating the socket object, we have to go for binding. So that is defined by the function s.bindoff. So this method binds the address, that is host name, comma, the port number pair to the particular socket. Okay, first we have created the socket, then we have to bind that socket with the particular host name and the port number to the particular socket. Okay, then after binding, the server has to listen. So for that, the function is s.listenOff. So this method sets up the connection and it waits, and it's the TCP, there will be a listener. So the server will be listening and it will be waiting for some of the requests from the other devices. Once a particular request has been identified, it has to accept. So that is with the help of this function s.acceptOff. So this passively accepts the TCP client connection and waiting until the connection arrives. Okay, so it will be getting connected. Then after accepting the request, it has to establish the connection. So that is with the help of this. What is it? This is at the client side. So this is at the server side. Okay. So after what is the server is ready to accept the request, the client has to establish the connection to that particular server. So that is done with the help of this command, that is s dot connect off, this function. So this method actively initiates the TCP server connection between that particular client and the server. Okay. Apart from this, we should know some of the general socket method. That is, after establishing connection, it has to send and receive the data between the server and the client. Okay, so that is s dot receive off. So this method receives the TCP message, and s dot send off, this method transmits the TCP message, and s dot receive from, so this method receives some kind of a UDP messages and send to, that is, this method transmits from UDP message from the server to the client. Okay, once these connections or the sending and receiving of data are being finished, we have to close that function or disconnect it. Okay, so s dot close off. So this method closes the socket. So here thereafter the connection of that particular client with the server will be disconnected, will come to an end. So this is how a particular client will be requesting for a service from the server and gets the service done and it disconnects. So this is how the socket programming is helping in connecting the devices to a particular network. And also we have one more function called, that is the method socket.getHostName of. So it returns the host name of the particular server where it is connected. That returns only that IP address. Socket.getHostName of means it returns the IP address of that particular host. Okay, with that IP address we will be identifying to which we have to establish the connection. Okay. Now let us see. So these are the methods that we need to make use of while writing the program for a server. That is, first we have to create the socket, bind it, accept it, and we have to establish the connection. So this we have already seen. Now let us go into a simple program. So first, as I have told you earlier, so we are going to start to write the program for server. So we'll have the file name as s.server. So after explaining the program, we will go and run it in the simple Colab and let us see how the code is functioning. Okay. So this is the server program, that is server.py file. So we are first importing the socket module. So whatever the library functions that we need to have, we have to first import the socket. Then we are creating the socket object with the help of this function, that is s is equal to socket dot socket off. Then next step, we are getting the host name of the local machine name, that is the IP address, and assigning it to the variable host. Okay, constant host, that is host is equal to socket dot get host name of. Then we are assigning the port address. This port address we can define of the particular which port we have to give the service, that we can define. It can be a number. Okay. Then after getting the host address and the port address, host address means the IP address and the port address, we have to bind the socket by how s dot bind of function, by passing these parameters host comma port. We have to bind the port. Then after the bit has to wait and listen. Now wait for the client connection. When all these functions are true, what it has to do, it has to pass the address. The client has to establish the connection by passing the address, and it has to accept. The server has to accept. Once the getting connection, it has to send a message who got connection from that particular address. Then it has to start sending the data. Then after once the connection, the data transfer is over, it has to send an acknowledgement message, that is for thank you for connecting. Then close the connection. So this is a simple program for this server in the Python. Okay. Next one is we'll go for the client. How we have to create a simple Python program for connecting to a client. Same way, we create a file, client.py file. So the import socket. First, we have to import the socket module here. Then they create the socket. Then getting the host name, assigning the port address. Then s.connect. We are establishing the connection of this particular host and the port address. Then after receiving the, we have to receive the data from that particular, at this particular port, because the client is connected to the network with the help of socket at this particular port address. Okay, the server will be identifying each and everything with the help of this port address only. Okay, then after receiving the data, it has to send an acknowledgement message, and then the function is closed. So that will be closing the socket once the data transfer is complete. Okay, so this is how we have to establish a connection to a client. Okay, so for example, we will try to ping the server, that is the Google. So that is in the command prompt. If you want to know the IP address of the Google, as we have seen in that video clipping, that is $ping www.google.com, it will give the IP address. Suppose if you want to write a program in Python for getting the IP address of this Google server, we have to write like this, that is import socket, then IP is equal to socket.get host by name. So we have to pass that is a parameter, that web page www.google.com. Print IP means it will be printing the IP address of that particular Google. Okay, the server, Google server. Okay, so with this we have to proceed. Okay, now let us see the simple program for this, that is the simple script for connecting the Google with using the socket programming in Python. So as we have said earlier, the import socket, first we have to import the library functions and the import system functions, and we are starting to create the socket object. So S is equal to S dot socket of, and we are passing the parameter socket dot AF underscore INET. It is nothing but the host address, and the socket dot socket string, it is nothing but the, what is that, connection oriented protocol for the TCP. Okay, and after that we have to print a command as an acknowledgement for us, that is sockets successfully created. And if any error occurs or if any parameter occurs, this error will be, message can be prompted here. And here we are going to define the port as port is equal to 80. Then we are going to obtain the host IP for the particular Google server. That is host IP is equal to socket.get host by name, then passing the parameter www.google.com. So that is assigned to this host IP. Once this is over, if any error occurs, that error message we can prompt, and after that we have to connect to that particular server. How? By this method, that is s.connectoff is equal to connectoff host IP comma the particular port address. So we are connecting the Google server to that particular client which is available at the particular port address 80 here. And once the connection is established, the socket has successfully connected to Google, which is available at the particular port address. Okay, so this is how we have to write the program for connecting it to a Google. Okay, let us see. Let us, after seeing the program, let us see how it is working. So the output of after running this program, you will be getting socket is successfully created and socket has successfully connected to the Google server, which is available at the particular port. This is the IP address. Okay. So what do we get here? First of all, the socket is made. Then the Google's IP address is resolved. Then lastly, it is connected to Google. So then after whatever data we want to send and we want to receive from that particular server, we can start establishing the connection. So this function allows to send the data to a server to which the socket is connected, and the server can also send data to the client using this function. This is how we create and establish a connection to a particular server. So in this example, we have seen as an for connecting to a Google server. Okay. Now let us see. So these are after establishing a connection, we have to accept and send and receive the data. So this is a simple server client program. So same way we have to create the socket and we have to define the port address, and then after creating we have to bind it. Then after binding, the server has to listen. When all the cases are true, it has to pass the parameter and send and receive the data, and then it has to close the function. Okay. So now let us see. So this is for the simple client. So it has to start the server, the Python server. Once it is done, we can type it in the command prompt. So the socket is successfully created. The socket is binded to the particular address, this 12345. The socket is listening and the connection is established at that particular port. Okay. So after connection is established, we have to send an acknowledgement message. Thank you for connecting to a server, and the output will be from that server is working. It shows the server is working. And this is at the client side. Okay. This is at the client side. Now let us see how to write the script in the Colab, and let us see an example. So this is the program which we have seen as an example for pinging the Google server. So now let us start to run. Okay, it is showing some error at particular line. So now let us see what the parentheses are missing here. And here also. And okay. Okay. So now the socket is successfully created, and the socket has successfully connected to the Google on port, which is available at that particular address, IP address 173.194.217.99. Okay, so this is the program. So what we have seen here, first we have imported the socket, and we have what is that, created the socket method, and we have passed the two parameters, and then we're defining the port address at 80, and we have identified. So we are getting the host IP address, and that is passed as a parameter, and the socket is successfully created, and the socket is successfully connected to the particular Google. Okay, and then next we will see another program for creating a client. So in the same way, first we are creating, then binding, then the server is listening, then it has to establish the connection. So now let us run this code. So here again, the parentheses are missing. So these are the errors that might be occurring, syntax errors. Okay. Socket created successfully. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it keeps listening. Okay, successfully socket is successfully created, and it is binded to that particular port address 12345. It is binded to particular port address 12345, and the socket is listening. Okay, so this is how we write the program in Python. So what is the concept here? First we have to, so let us have a quick recap of what we have seen. First, we have to import the socket library. Then we have to create the socket object. Okay, with the help of the method socket of function, and the pass the two parameters. First one is the host name, and that is followed by the IP address. Then the socket stock underscore string for connection oriented and the connectionless protocol. Then we have to identify or get the host name. After that, that will be assigned to. We have to establish the server should listen for any request from the client. Then the client has to establish connection to that particular server. Then after it has to, what is that, send and receive the commands. After that, it has to close the function. Both at the first the client will get disconnected off, then later the server will close the function. So this is the flow of the client server program. So in today's session, we have learned about what is a socket and how we have to create a socket with the help of Python programming and a simple program of getting connected to a Google server and the simple client server program, how it should be connected. Okay, I think we have come to the end of session. Hope you had a very good, information about the client server program in case of a network connectivity with the help of Python programming. Thank you. At this juncture, I would like to thank the management of VS Lakshmi Engineering College once again for giving us this opportunity. Also, I would like to thank Dr. S. Karthikeyan, who is our coordinator, that is Fellowship Institute of Engineers IA coordinator from our Sathyabama, for introducing the persons from VS Lakshmi Engineering College for arranging this faculty development program. Thank you all. Dear faculty members, the recording of the session will be available in the IEA Sathyabama YouTube link that will be shared in the WhatsApp group once all the videos are uploaded. Thank you all. Thank you for your patient listening to this session.